It started with a notification. A soft buzz on Jenna's phone as it sat face down on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. I wasn't the jealous type. I never had been. But something about the way she had been acting lately made me pause. The late nights at work, the sudden obsession with her phone, the way she flinched when I reached for it, laughing it off like I was being paranoid. I wasn't looking for proof. I didn't need it. My gut already knew. But when that message popped up, a preview flashing across the screen, I knew I had to see it. Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? I felt my stomach drop. The message had no name, just a number. No heart emojis, no obvious signs of affection. But I knew. I knew in my bones. My fingers hovered over the screen, my pulse hammering as I debated whether to unlock it. Would she know? Would she have a way of catching me? But then my mind flashed back to all the little moments. The coldness. The distance. The nights she came home smelling like someone else's cologne. I picked up the phone, swiped up, and entered her passcode. It was still the same. She didn't think I'd ever check. The message thread opened, and my breath caught. It wasn't just one message. It was dozens. Weeks of conversations. Photos. Plans. And the name at the top of the screen? Mark. My best friend. I clenched my jaw, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. Mark. The man I trusted with everything. The man I called my brother. The man who sat at my dinner table, clinked glasses with me on double dates, joked with me about our wives like we were all just living the perfect suburban dream. He was screwing my wife. I kept reading, my vision blurring as rage burned through me. Friday night was incredible. You have no idea what you do to me. We have to be more careful. Eric is starting to notice. I wish I could be with you all the time. He doesn't deserve you. I let out a sharp breath, steadying myself. She knew I was catching on. And Mark? He thought I wasn't good enough for my own wife. He thought he was better than me. Footsteps. The shower turning off. The sound of Jenna humming to herself as she stepped out of the bathroom, completely unaware that her world was about to change. I put the phone down exactly where it was, my hands shaking, my mind running a mile a minute. I couldn't let her know I had seen it. Not yet. She walked into the kitchen wrapped in a towel, smiling like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't betraying me in the worst way possible. "Hey, babe," she said, opening the fridge, completely at ease. "What are you up to?" I forced myself to smile back, my voice calm, even. "Nothing. Just thinking about dinner plans." She grinned, grabbing a bottle of water, completely oblivious. "Oh, let's do something nice. Maybe invite Mark and Lisa over?" The audacity of it almost made me laugh. I nodded, my jaw tight. "Yeah, that sounds perfect." Because if they wanted to play me for a fool, they had no idea what was coming. I spent the rest of the day pretending everything was normal. Jenna had no idea that I had seen the messages, no idea that I knew what she was doing behind my back. That Mark, the man I had trusted for years, the man I had shared vacations and holidays with, the man I had considered family, was sleeping with my wife. But now I wasn't just a betrayed husband. I was a man with a plan. Jenna had suggested we invite Mark and Lisa over for dinner. I agreed like it was just another night, just another friendly gathering between close couples. She thought she was still in control. She had no idea I had already flipped the game. I spent the afternoon preparing. I set the table perfectly, candles flickering softly in the dim light. I picked out a bottle of wine I knew Jenna loved, poured 2 glasses, and watched as she flitted around the kitchen, humming like she wasn't lying to my face every single day. She kissed my cheek, thanked me for setting up everything, and didn't even flinch. The woman was a professional liar. But I was about to make her slip. Mark and Lisa arrived right on time, Mark grinning like he didn't have a care in the world, slapping me on the back like we were still best friends. I could smell his cologne as we shook hands. The same scent I had smelled on Jenna weeks ago. He thought he had me fooled. Lisa was smiling, completely unaware of the deception happening right under her nose, laughing as she hugged Jenna, complimenting her dress. "You two are always such great hosts," she said, taking a sip of wine. If only she knew. We sat down for dinner, the 4 of us, like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong. I watched Mark and Jenna carefully. The subtle glances. The way her fingers brushed against his when she handed him the serving dish. The tiny smirk that flickered across his face when Lisa wasn't looking. They were comfortable. Too comfortable. They thought they were getting away with it. They thought I was blind. "So," I said casually, cutting into my steak. My tone light, smooth. "Crazy week, huh? Everyone been keeping busy?" Jenna nodded immediately, taking a sip of her wine. "Work's been insane. Late nights, meetings, you know how it is." Mark chuckled, shaking his head. "Tell me about it." "I swear, some nights I barely make it home before midnight." They were already lying. Right to my face. I smirked slightly, keeping my voice steady. "That's funny," I mused, leaning back in my chair. "Because I heard you two had a little getaway this past Friday." Silence. Jenna's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Mark's fork stopped midair. Lisa blinked, glancing between the two of them. "Wait, what?" Jenna forced a laugh, shaking her head. "What are you talking about, babe?" Mark did the same, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips. "Yeah, man, what do you mean?" I smiled, slow and deliberate, letting the tension stretch, letting them sweat. "Oh, just something interesting I came across." I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and placed it on the table. The video was queued up. The evidence. Jenna went pale. Mark stiffened. Lisa frowned, confused. I hit play. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Jenna. Mark. The hotel hallway. The way she glanced over her shoulder before he pulled her inside. Lisa gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God." Jenna let out a sharp breath, her eyes wide with panic. "Eric." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Save it." Mark looked like he wanted to bolt, his face flushing, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Lisa turned to him, her voice shaking. "Tell me this isn't real." Mark swallowed hard, scrambling for words. I can explain." Lisa stood abruptly, knocking over her chair, her eyes burning with betrayal. "Explain?" she spat. "You're cheating on me with her?" Jenna reached for my hand, her voice pleading. "Eric, I pulled away, shaking my head. "Don't. Just don't." The room was suffocating with tension, the weight of reality crashing down on them all at once. Lisa turned to me, her eyes still wide, still processing. "How long have you known?" I exhaled slowly, glancing at Jenna, then at Mark. "Long enough." Jenna's lip trembled, her hands shaking. "We can fix this," she whispered. "Please, Eric." I let out a short, cold laugh. "Fix what?" "The fact that you've been sleeping with my best friend behind my back? That every time I shook his hand, he was the same guy screwing my wife? That you two thought I was too stupid to figure it out?" Lisa turned back to Mark, tears brimming in her eyes. Was it even real? Were we ever real? Mark had nothing to say. Jenna had nothing to say. Because there were no more lies left to tell. I pushed my chair back, standing slowly, letting the silence weigh on them, letting them feel the full extent of what they had done. "Dinner's over." Then I walked out, and I didn't look back. I walked out of the dining room, the echo of my footsteps drowning out the stunned silence behind me, the weight of the betrayal pressing against my back like a storm ready to break. I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to see the mess I left behind. Jenna's shaky breaths, Lisa's choked sobs, Mark's pathetic attempts to justify what he had done. They weren't my problem anymore. They made their choices. Now they had to live with them. I stepped out onto the front porch, inhaling deeply, letting the cool night air cut through the heat of my rage, my heartbreak. But I wasn't just angry. I was free. For the first time in months, I wasn't trapped in the dark, second-guessing, wondering, searching for answers Jenna had no intention of giving me. I had the truth, and I had delivered it exactly the way they deserved. The door behind me creaked open, footsteps scrambling to catch up. "Eric, wait." Lisa's voice, shaky, raw, filled with devastation. I turned, meeting her wide, tear-streaked eyes, her hands shaking at her sides. "Did you know?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you know before tonight?" I exhaled slowly, nodding. "I found out this morning." She let out a choked breath, her fingers trembling as she wrapped her arms around herself. How long? I swallowed hard. At least a few months. Maybe longer. Her expression twisted, something breaking in her gaze, something collapsing in real time. I was so stupid, she whispered. I thought we were happy. I looked away, my jaw tightening. Yeah, me too. The door opened again. Mark. He stepped out cautiously, his face pale. His lips parted like he wanted to say something, like he thought he still had a shot at making this better. Eric. I clenched my fists. Don't. His mouth snapped shut, his throat bobbing, his hands fidgeting like he was trying to decide whether to defend himself or beg for mercy. I messed up, he finally said, his voice hoarse. But you have to believe me, man. It didn't mean. I let out a sharp laugh, cutting him off. Didn't mean what? Didn't mean anything? Because I read the messages, Mark. The ones where you told my wife you wanted her, that I didn't deserve her, that she should be with you instead. His face drained of color, his composure cracking. I was drunk, he muttered weakly. It was a mistake. I tilted my head, my voice deadly calm. A mistake is a one-time thing. This was planned. This was months of sneaking around, months of lying, months of looking me in the eye and pretending we were still friends. He opened his mouth, but I wasn't finished. You sat at my dinner table, I continued, my voice sharp as a knife. You toasted to my marriage. You looked me in the eye, knowing damn well you were sleeping with my wife. He flinched, shame finally settling in, but I wasn't done. And the worst part? I took a slow step forward, my voice dropping lower. You actually thought you were smarter than me. You thought I'd never find out? He didn't speak. Because what could he say? The door opened again. Jenna. She stepped onto the porch, her face streaked with tears, her eyes desperate, her hands clasped together like she was holding herself together by sheer force of will. Eric, she whispered, taking a shaky step toward me. Please, let's talk. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. Talk? Now you want to talk? She sniffled, her lip trembling. I made a mistake. Lisa let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Oh, that's rich. You weren't calling it a mistake when you were sneaking around behind our backs, were you? Jenna flinched but kept her gaze on me. I still love you, she whispered. This doesn't have to be the end. My stomach twisted, a strange mix of disgust and disbelief churning inside me. Even now, she was trying to control the narrative. Even now, she thought she could fix this with the right words, the right plea, the right combination of tears and apologies. But she didn't realize. I had already walked away. I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. You don't love me, I said quietly. You love the way I made your life easy. Her face crumbled, but I didn't care. You threw us away, Jenna. You threw me away. And now you have to live with it. Her breath hitched. So that's it, she whispered. You're just done? I nodded. I've never been more done in my life. Lisa crossed her arms, glaring at Mark. And you? What the hell do you have to say for yourself? He swallowed hard, looking like a trapped animal, his gaze darting between us, searching for a way out. Lisa, she held up a hand. Don't. Just don't. I hope she was worth it, because you just lost everything. Silence settled between us, thick, heavy, final. I took a slow breath, stepping off the porch, onto the pavement, turning one last time to look at the wreckage of what used to be my life. Dinner's over, I said simply. Then I walked away. And this time, no one followed. I walked away from the house, my footsteps steady, my heart pounding but not from anger. Not anymore. It was over. I had done what I needed to do, exposed them, shattered the illusion they thought they could keep. Mark, Jenna, Lisa. They were left standing in the ruins of the life they had built on lies. But I wasn't finished. This wasn't just about making them feel guilty. This was about making sure they never forgot. I got in my car, gripping the steering wheel, inhaling deeply, steadying myself. My phone buzzed, lighting up with another call. Jenna. I let it ring. Then another text from Mark, a pathetic attempt at an explanation. I never meant to hurt you, man. We need to talk. I scoffed, shaking my head. Talk? Now? After months of betrayal? After the deception? They weren't sorry. They were just scrambling, panicking, trying to salvage whatever they could. Too late. I opened my messages, scrolled to the thread with Lisa, and sent one simple text. You deserve better than him. I have an idea. Call me when you're ready. Then I started the car and drove. The next morning, Lisa called. Her voice was hoarse, exhausted, like she hadn't slept. I still can't believe it, she said, barely above a whisper. I can. But that's why we're gonna make sure neither of them comes out of this unscathed. I could hear her breathing, the hesitation, the weight of everything still pressing down on her. What do you have in mind? I smirked slightly. You'll see. By noon, everything was in motion. Jenna's workplace had always prided itself on professionalism, on integrity. I knew her boss, knew exactly what kind of image he wanted to maintain. So I sent him an email. Anonymously, of course. A detailed breakdown of Jenna's little extracurricular activities, proof that she had been using business trips as cover for her affair, how she had manipulated company resources for her late-night meetups with Mark. Corporate fraud. Image damage. A company like hers? They wouldn't risk it. And by the time she found out, it was too late. Mark wasn't going to escape either. He thrived on his social circle, his reputation, the respect he had built up over the years. So Lisa did her part. She told everyone. Friends, family, co-workers, everyone who had ever respected him, trusted him, thought he was a stand-up guy. By the end of the day, the man who had once been my best friend was getting calls, texts, messages from people who wanted nothing to do with him anymore. He wasn't just exposed. He was exiled. And Jenna? She showed up at my apartment that night, pounding on the door. I opened it, leaning casually against the frame, watching her unravel. You got me fired, she shrieked, her voice shaking. You destroyed my life. I smirked, tilting my head. No, Jenna, you did. I just made sure everyone else saw it too. Her breath hitched, her eyes wide, desperate, searching for the man who once would have forgiven her, taken her back, let her rewrite history. But that man was gone. She stepped closer, lowering her voice, trying a different tactic. Eric, please. We can fix this. You don't have to do this. I exhaled slowly, my smirk fading. You don't get it, do you? I'm not doing anything. You already lost. I'm just watching it happen. Her lip trembled. I still love you, she whispered. I met her gaze, my voice calm. That's the difference between us, Jenna. I stopped loving you the second I saw the truth. Her breath hitched, her hands clenching at her sides, her perfect little world crumbling around her. She turned, walking away, her shoulders stiff, her pride still trying to hold itself together. I didn't watch her leave. I shut the door. And just like that, it was over. I shut the door, leaned against it, and exhaled slowly. The silence settled around me, heavy, but not suffocating. It was a silence that came with finality, with freedom. Jenna was gone, but the weight of everything she had done still hung in the air. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was done. I pushed off the door, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a drink, the amber liquid swirling in the glass as I sat down at the counter. My phone buzzed. Lisa. I picked up. It's done, she said, her voice steady but hollow. Mark's out. He came home to packed bags. I told him I wanted a divorce. I swirled the whiskey, watching the ice clink against the sides. Good. He doesn't deserve you. She let out a bitter laugh. Neither did Jenna. There was a long pause, the weight of everything still settling between us. So what now? She asked. I exhaled slowly. We move on. Lisa hesitated, then sighed. Yeah, easier said than done. One step at a time, I muttered, taking a sip. We already took the first one. Another pause. You know, she said, her voice quieter now, for what it's worth, I'm glad we didn't let them get away with it. My grip on the glass tightened. Yeah, me too. We ended the call, and I sat there for a while, letting everything replay in my head. Mark was gone. Jenna had nothing left. Lisa was free. And me? I had one last move to make. I pulled out my laptop, logged into my bank account, and started making changes. Jenna had been living comfortably off my income for years, barely contributing, spending money like it grew on trees. That was about to change. I canceled the joint credit cards, froze our shared savings, locked her out of everything. She was about to find out what it felt like to have the rug pulled out from under her. Then I did something I should have done a long time ago. I called a lawyer. By morning, the paperwork was in motion. Divorce. No negotiations. No second chances. No way for her to manipulate her way back in. My lawyer assured me that since Jenna had been unfaithful, I had the upper hand. "We'll make sure she walks away with nothing but regret," he said. And I believed him. The next time Jenna called, I let it go to voicemail. Then another. And another. The texts started flooding in. "We need to talk. Please, just hear me out. Eric, don't do this. I love you." I blocked her number. A few days later, Lisa called me again. "Jenna's spiraling," she said, almost amused. "She's telling people you're ruining her life." I smirked. "I'm just making sure she finally faces the consequences." Lisa laughed softly. "Well, it's working." There was a beat of silence before she added, "I think we should celebrate." I raised an eyebrow, even though she couldn't see me. "Celebrate?" "Yeah," she said. "You and me. Dinner. Just two people who got played by the wrong ones and came out stronger." I hesitated, not because I wasn't interested, but because I hadn't thought about what came after all of this. But maybe Lisa was right. Maybe this wasn't just about revenge. Maybe this was about starting over. I smirked, swirling my drink. Sounds like a plan. Because the past was behind us. And the future? It was wide open. I met Lisa for dinner 2 nights later, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't suffocating under the weight of everything. We chose a small restaurant outside the city, away from the places Jenna and Mark had ruined with their betrayal, a place untouched by their lies. Lisa was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window, swirling a glass of red wine, her expression unreadable. I slid into the seat across from her, exhaling as I set my keys on the table. "So," she said, tilting her head, a slow smirk curling at the edge of her lips. "How does it feel, knowing they finally lost?" I leaned back, running a hand through my hair, letting a slow grin stretch across my face. "Feels like freedom." Lisa chuckled softly, raising her glass. "I'll drink to that." We clinked glasses, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself breathe. The waiter came and went, taking our orders, refilling our drinks, but my focus stayed on Lisa. She looked lighter. Not happy, not yet, but like a weight had finally been lifted. "Mark called me today," she said suddenly, setting her glass down. My jaw tightened slightly. "Yeah." She nodded, tracing the rim of her glass with her fingertip, her expression darkening. "He was desperate, begging me to talk, saying he made a mistake, that we can fix this." I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "And what did you say?" Lisa let out a humorless laugh. "I told him I'd rather set myself on fire than take him back." I chuckled, nodding. "Smart choice." She sighed, leaning back. "Jenna's been calling too. I think she expected me to take her side, to feel bad for her, but I have nothing left for her. She did this to herself." I swirled my whiskey, my gaze distant. "Yeah. And she still thinks she can manipulate her way back into my life." Lisa frowned slightly. "She reached out again?" I smirked, shaking my head. "Not directly, but she tried getting to me through mutual friends, telling them I'm being cruel, that I ruined her life out of spite." Lisa scoffed. "Classic Jenna. Always the victim, even when she's the one who caused the damage." The food arrived, but neither of us made a move to eat right away. The conversation felt heavier now, like we were both standing at the edge of something we hadn't fully acknowledged yet. "What happens now?" Lisa asked quietly, watching me. I took a slow sip of whiskey, setting the glass down before meeting her gaze. "Now, we move on." Lisa inhaled deeply, nodding. "Yeah, but how?" I studied her for a moment, then smirked. "One step at a time. Starting with this dinner." The night stretched on, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't thinking about revenge. about what had been taken from me, about how much I had lost. I was just living. Jenna and Mark were still out there, scrambling, trying to salvage the mess they had created. But they weren't my problem anymore. They could sink together for all I cared. By the time I walked Lisa to her car, the air between us felt different. Not just as two people bound by betrayal, but as something else, something new. She hesitated before opening her car door, glancing up at me, a question in her eyes. You think they'll ever stop trying to fix this? I smirked, shaking my head. They won't have a choice. We're done with them. They just haven't figured it out yet. She smiled softly, nodding. Good. Because I never want to see them again. I leaned against her car, watching her carefully. So what now? She smirked. I guess we just see where this goes. I nodded, stepping back as she slid into the driver's seat. Sounds like a plan. She started the engine, but before pulling away, she looked at me one last time. You deserve better, Eric. I smirked, shaking my head. So do you. And as she drove off, I realized something. I wasn't looking back anymore. I was only moving forward. I woke up to my phone buzzing on the nightstand, the screen lighting up the dark room. At first, I ignored it, rolling over, exhaling slowly. But then it buzzed again, and again, and again. I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face before reaching for it. Unknown number. My gut twisted. I knew who it was before I even answered. What do you want, Jenna? Silence, just her shaky breath coming through the line. Then, finally, I need to see you. I sat up, already shaking my head. Not happening. Please, she whispered, her voice hoarse, desperate. It's important. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling. There's nothing left to say. Eric, she choked out, I don't know what to do. I lost my job, I lost my friends. My parents won't even look at me. Not my problem. I cut in, my voice flat. She let out a shaky breath. You did this to me. I clenched my jaw, anger flaring. No, Jenna. You did this to yourself. Silence. Then a soft sniffle. Just meet me, she murmured. One last time. Just give me that. I hesitated, my instinct screaming at me to hang up, to ignore her, to let her deal with the mess she created. But something in her voice made me pause. Not regret, not remorse. Something else. A final move. A last-ditch attempt. Fine, I muttered. One time. That's it. I met her at a quiet bar on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions, where secrets could exist in the dim lighting and cheap whiskey. Jenna was already there when I walked in, sitting at a booth in the back, her fingers curled around a half-empty glass, her eyes hollow, dark circles beneath them. She looked nothing like the confident woman who had laughed behind my back while betraying me. She looked defeated. I slid into the seat across from her, keeping my expression neutral. Talk. She swallowed hard, setting the glass down. I know you hate me, she started, her voice barely above a whisper. And I deserve that. I do. But you don't understand what's happening. I exhaled sharply. What's happening, Jenna? Enlighten me. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her bag, pulling out a folded piece of paper, sliding it across the table. I hesitated before picking it up, my eyes scanning the text. A lawsuit. Mark was suing me. For defamation. I let out a humorless laugh, tossing the paper back onto the table. He's serious? Jenna nodded, biting her lip. He says you ruined his life. That you spread lies about him. Got him blacklisted from his job. Destroyed his reputation. I shook my head, smirking. I didn't have to spread lies, Jenna. The truth did that all on its own. She exhaled slowly. I know. But he's desperate. He lost everything. He blames you. He should be blaming himself. I muttered, my jaw tightening. Why are you telling me this? What do you want? She hesitated, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. I want you to fix this. I blinked, staring at her. You're joking. Eric, please, she begged. Talk to him. Convince him to drop it. If this goes to court, it'll get worse for everyone. You don't want that, do you? I leaned back, crossing my arms. Why do you even care? I thought you two deserved each other. She flinched. I don't care about him. I care about what we had. I let out a sharp laugh. What we had. Jenna. What we had died the second you chose him. Her breath hitched, but I didn't care. Not anymore. I picked up the paper, tapped it against the table, then slid it back toward her. You tell Mark if he wants to go to war, he better be ready to lose. Jenna's face paled. Eric. I stood, tossing a few bills onto the table for her drink. We're done here. And just like that, I walked away. I walked out of that bar and never looked back. Jenna's voice was still echoing in my head. Her pathetic attempt to guilt me into fixing her mess, to make me responsible for the consequences of her own betrayal. But that was the thing about cheaters. They never took responsibility. They lied, manipulated, twisted the story until somehow, the person they hurt became the villain, and they became the victim. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. Mark thought he could intimidate me with a lawsuit. He thought he could flip the script, turn himself into the wounded party, make it seem like I had destroyed his life instead of the truth catching up with him. But what he didn't realize, I was 5 steps ahead. I drove straight to my lawyer's office. I had already prepared for something like this. The moment I exposed them, I knew there was a chance Mark would try to retaliate, try to salvage his reputation by pinning the fallout on me. But the thing about lawsuits? They go both ways. My lawyer grinned when I told him what was happening. This is good, he said, leaning back in his chair, tapping his pen against the desk. Defamation cases are hard to win, especially when the evidence is stacked against him. But you know what we can do? I smirked, already knowing the answer. Countersue. And that's exactly what we did. By the end of the week, Mark was served. Not only was I countersuing him for harassment and emotional distress, but Lisa had decided to join the fight. She was suing him for financial damages, for the emotional trauma of their marriage, for everything he had put her through. He wanted a war. We gave him one. The moment the news broke, Mark panicked. I heard from mutual friends that he was scrambling, calling people, trying to figure out how the hell everything had backfired on him so fast. Jenna was no better. She was unemployed, isolated, and from what I heard, her parents had stopped speaking to her. I guess even they had their limits when it came to disgrace. Then, out of nowhere, Mark tried to reach out. A pathetic email, begging for a private conversation, saying we could work this out like men, instead of dragging it through the courts. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to my lawyer. The next time I heard about him, he had dropped the lawsuit. Just like that. I wasn't surprised. The moment he realized he had no case, the moment he saw that he was the one who would lose everything, he folded. That's what cowards did. Lisa called me the night we got the news. It's over, she said, her voice light, almost disbelieving. It's really over. I exhaled, leaning back against my couch, a slow grin spreading across my face. Yeah, it is. There was a long silence between us, the weight of everything finally lifting. You know, she murmured, for the first time in a long time, I don't feel trapped anymore. I smiled, swirling the whiskey in my glass. Me neither. And just like that, it was done. Jenna and Mark had nothing left. No power. No reputation. No way to twist the truth. They lost. And me? I walked away with exactly what I wanted. Freedom. Lisa and I never talked about what came next, about whether this strange, twisted experience would turn into something more between us. But we didn't need to. We had time. And for once, time was finally ours.